Welcome to the Divine Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Tara Migalski. Together with my guest experts, I cover topics ranging from cutting-edge healing modalities to hormonal harmony, to nutrition and plant medicine, to mindfulness and spirituality. My goal is to educate and inspire so you can create your own divine lifestyle. It's time to dive inward, rewire your brain, and heal from the inside out. Welcome to the Divine Lifestyles Podcast. I'm your host, Tara Migalski, and today I am joined by Eir Alta, a medical astrologist, clinical herbalist, and a green witch. She is obsessed with helping women restore balance to their hormones through their cosmic blueprint and design. She has helped countless women restore balance and vitality to their bodies and rebalance their hormones that have led to pregnancy, normal periods, reduction in cramps, and PMS symptoms. She lives on the road in her van, and we're going to hear all about that in just a moment, with her family. And she is the owner of Twin Raven Naturals, her apothecary, where she formulates and makes all of the herbal medicine that she dispenses. So thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
So, okay, before we dive into your work, where in the world are you?
We're currently in upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. We are officially on vacation, but I don't know if you really ever get a vacation when you live on the road, right?
I know. So you're in New York. Do you have plans on coming down, down towards Manhattan area at all?
Not currently. We are heading from here to Virginia to pick up our youngest daughter from her bio dad's house afterwards, and then we'll be headed back west, where we tend to spend our winter. So we're taking a slow trek out there to be where we want to be in the winter time, which is usually somewhere in Arizona. We spend there, so we have it timed out that we're going to take a really slow trek and get there around end of September, beginning of October. So
I love this. So, I want to know more really about your nomadic van lifestyle. So tell me, what made you, decide to embark on this unconventional path, which I think is super cool, by the way.
Well, thank you. We do too. So in 2018, my husband and I got married. We'd been together for a while, but we made it all official in 2018. And shortly after, we just realized, we got talking and we just realized that we were really tired of living that rat race life where every day we got up, and I was working a nursing job that was 5 days a week at the time. He worked as an IT guy for a company there, so he was working 5 days a week. So literally every day we were getting up at 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., somewhere there, waking all the kids up, getting everybody ready, going to school, dropping them off, working all day, picking them up, taking 2 hours to get home or more, depending on traffic, and never seeing the kids, never seeing each other. Weekends, I was either on call, so we couldn't go anywhere because I had the possibility of having to get into work if they called me, and we only had a 30-minute recall time, so we couldn't go very far away, so usually stayed at the house, or we were running around like chickens with our heads cut off trying to get laundry done and clean the house and go get groceries, and that whole thing, right? We never saw the kids, we never saw each other. And we just said to each other, we're like, you know what? We want something different. We're really tired of this. There has got to be a better way. So we kind of started doing our own research at this, same time. And I said to him, I said, well, I used to do travel nursing, and I've heard that people do it with their families. And I did it when I was single. So and by myself, it was me and my dog. And so it was different. And I said, but I've heard people do it with their families. I don't know how they do that though. What do you do? And so we started researching it and realized that all these travel nurse families traveled together in RVs and stuff. And I was like, well, we could do that. We don't have an RV, but I'm sure we could go find one, right? So we got February of 2019, we decided that's what we're going to do. We're going to sell everything we own, basically, use the proceeds to buy an RV, and we're going to hit the road summer, fall time, right? And so we called up an agent, and we got the house listed, and we, took 30 days to get it listed because we had to make some minor repairs and things, and we got it all set up. It went on the market in March. We had a full-fledged offer, 100%. There was no, anything that we had to worry about. Coming in 30 days later, we went ahead and we agreed to it, and we sold everything between April 30th and May 20th when we moved out of the house. We sold everything that did not need to go in that RV. We ended up moving into an RV park for a little bit, trying to decide when we were going to start actually being on the road. And then August came, and my husband got laid off from his job. They laid off 4,500 people, and he got hit with it, and we had to make a decision quick on what we were doing. And we looked at each other and said, well, no time like the present to get started. So I called my old recruiter, and she found me a position, and we packed up all of the kids, informed them that we were actually hitting the road this time, not just staying stationary in an RV park. And off we went. And over the years, we've downsized considerably down to a van now, because we just realized we preferred traveling in something smaller that was easier to get places. And we've just been doing that ever since. And we absolutely, absolutely adore it. And our kids love it. And they keep asking us. We tried to stop one year, and they're like, are we done for good? Are we going back? Like, what's happening? So we decided that stopping now was not really for us. So we're yeah, we don't know when we'll stop or if we'll stop, but we're going to continue for now.
Wow. And you have your business as well
Hmm.
as I'm sure you're homeschooling. Like you're
Yes.
kind of probably doing everything,
Yep.
right? Must have been really interesting during COVID, you know? It was
Mm.
probably the perfect thing to be doing during COVID, right? Because
Yeah, because honestly, the department that I worked for as a nurse at the hospital when we, had our house and everything was shut down completely. And there was either the option of you go work in bedside nursing, which I had not done in 7 to 10 years, or you just don't work at all. And we would have been screwed, because he would have just lost his job, and he was having a hard time finding one because 4,500 people were all laid off at the same time in our not very huge town. And then there was, then that we would have been like, no, we would have either lost the house altogether, it would have been foreclosed on, and then we wouldn't have had a backup plan. There was nowhere to go. Or we would have, if we didn't lose it, we would have been in not a position to sell it and then do what we wanted. So I feel it was really divine timing that it happened when it did, and that's when we were supposed to go. But yeah, it worked out really, really well, because I don't know what would have happened to us if we had been in a house during COVID.
yeah, yeah, no. So you're very lucky. So let's dive into your work that you're
Okay.
doing now. So what is a medical astrology? Like what
Yes.
I now know a little bit more, but I want you to tell people who are listening.
Yeah. So, medical astrology is the use of an individual's natal chart, which, when you're using it in this, is called a planetary health chart instead of a natal chart, just an FYI. But you use their natal chart, so their birth chart, and seeing where the planets are positioned in their birth chart. And each planet is assigned certain body parts, as well as like an overall, like, how it affects the body, right? Like an overall vibe. Like the sun, it governs like your hormones and your life battery, right? Your vital force. And like Saturn is very like a cold, suppressive, depressive planet. So depending on what planet your signs are in, that helps me determine what's going on elsewhere in your body, because each sign rules a body part. So like Aries starts in the head and Pisces ends in the feet. So all the way down in each sign. And so I use that chart to then determine, like, if you come to me and you're like, hey, I'm having a lot of trouble with, I'll pick someone recently that I just did. They're like, my left knee hurts all the time. Please tell me what's going on. Right. And I was actually able to see what was happening in their body and ways that they could rebalance that. So it's using your natal chart to see what your specific cosmic blueprint, cosmic design is, how the planets are influencing and affecting your health based on the signs that those planets are in for you, and then leaning into the balancing planets and signs to bring balance back to your body.
So yeah, I find this all super interesting. And for those that are listening, I did my chart. So you did my reading that was really, really, really pretty spot on. So I've done human design, I've done gene keys. I love human design. I study it.
Mm-hmm.
So what would you say is the difference between, medical astrology, human design, gene keys? Like what are the differences? Or are they all sort of related?
They're similar to each other and kind of related for sure, because human design has aspects of astrology in it. So they're obviously a little, similar to each other. Gene keys are, again, very similar. They use a lot of the same like terminology and things as astrology and whatnot. The slight difference that there is that medical astrology is actually a branch that was used for the longest time and taught in medical colleges, and that physicians had to know to become physicians. And if you did not know it, you did not use it, you were considered a quack, and people would not come to see you because they thought you didn't know what you were doing. They realized that we are a microcosm of the universe. Plants are a microcosm of the universe. And when we get all that in balance and we use plants to help heal our body, that healing comes better and easier and faster than anything else. And so it's slightly different in the fact that it was once like the mainstream way of treating people. Um, and that's obviously fallen out of favor in practice now, as people have decided that it doesn't have any bearing on our health. But as you know from getting a reading, and so many other people that I talk to and do this for know, that is 100% inaccurate. It is a super accurate way to determine what's going on, what's happening, and save people a lot of like invasive testing and stuff too, right? Like if you're tired of being a guinea pig and poked and prodded, this is a great way to like really see what's going on without any more poking and prodding and testing expensive, procedures that maybe you don't even need. And then it also really points to not just physical ailments, but like maybe spiritual ailments that are, spiritual things that are affecting your physical health and mental and, emotional. It does all, it's very holistic. It does the whole body, right? And so I feel very comprehensive because it doesn't just pick like one thing to focus on. It's not just a physical thing, but they are very similar. I use human design for myself when I'm running my business. I actually run my business based on my human design, and I use it even on a lot of my clients. Sometimes when I have like my long-term clients that I work with for months and months on end in my program, I will run their human design chart as well, because that helps me understand another piece of them and how they learn and what's going on with them, so that I can tailor their like personal side of the program to them a little easier. So I think they all definitely have their place for sure, and that there's a lot of similarities and a few differences, but um, they're not. There's something you can definitely use together. It's not like you have to pick one over the other, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And want to kind of dive in just to give people who are listening some more context, but I use a lot of the gene keys and also my human design in my work as well, even with just
Mhm.
like marketing and how I show up and use my voice and how
Yeah.
I kind of and how I show up through my business is all through my design, which I'm a
Hmm.
responder. So it's very, very interesting. So let's kind of dive in a little bit. Okay, what are, because, and then we can get into the nitty gritties, a little bit of my chart. I don't mind sharing, but like, what are the energies of the planets?
So we mainly focus on the 7 main planets, which are the sun, moon, because the moon in astrology is a planet, sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Saturn, Jupiter. Those are the ones, and Mercury. Those are the ones that we mainly focus on. Um, there's some aspects of Uranus and Neptune and Pluto that we can use as well, but because they weren't the main 7 when medical astrology was created, they don't have as much practical use as the main 7. So we focus on those. So every planet has an opposite and balancing planet, except for Mercury. Mercury is the one that can balance all of them. So the sun is obviously the main sign that I look at, right? Because it governs our life force, it's our battery, and its energy is very hot and drying and warming, and it brings a lot of balance and heat to the body, and it brings a lot of life to the body. I can always tell just by talking to somebody who has not had enough sun in their life, and this can be physical sun, like going outside in the sun, or not have enough like warming in their life in some way, because they just look different, right? They have a lot of pallor to them. A lot of times they're very sluggish. They don't have a lot of energy. So the sun is very energizing, it's very warming, whereas the moon is the opposite of the sun. It's very cooling, it's very moistening, it brings a lot of dampness, and it really governs the emotions and like the emotional waters and the physical waters of the body. And so its energy is a lot more like calming in a lot of ways, whereas the sun's is more like energizing and fiery, right? And then you have Venus and Mars, which balance each other. And Venus is, again, very similar to the moon. It's a very calming planet. It brings a lot of like energy into the chart in the way of being very moistening, very like peaceful in some ways. And it also, because it rules Taurus and Libra, it brings a lot of beauty into people's lives. And this can be physical beauty, mental beauty, like any of that. And people who have a strong Venusian presence in their charts do tend to be people who tend to be artists and enjoy that kind of stuff. So it brings a lot of like emotional, like, I don't know how to even explain it. My brain just went blank, but a lot of emotional happiness to people. But it's also very moistening
Joy.
and yes, joy. And it's very moistening as well as cooling in like terms of the energetics that it brings. Whereas Mars is obviously the exact opposite of that. It's very hot and dry. And in fact, in medical astrology, Mars is actually hotter than the sun. It's considered a much hotter planet than even the sun is in medical astrology. So it brings a lot of heat and a lot of warmth and a lot of drying aspects into your chart. And it's actually one of the malefics. So it's the one that we call is the seat of inflammation. So if you have a strong Mars presence in your chart, it can lend toward a lot of inflammation and trapped heat in the body, which can then lead to multiple different, issues because of that. And then we have Saturn and Jupiter, which are also balance each other out. Saturn is one of the other malefics. It's the exact opposite of Mars in the fact that it's very cold, it's very suppressive and constrictive in its energy. It likes to stagnate things, it likes to slow things down, it likes to constrict, right? And that makes sense because it rules boundaries. And this is like emotional boundaries, physical boundaries, spiritual boundaries, all the boundaries of your life. And then it rules Capricorn, which rules the actual physical boundaries of your body, your skin, your bones, etc. And so it's also very cooling. It's a very cold planet. And so depending on where it is in your chart as well, if it's above the horizon, that helps because it warms it up some. If it's below the horizon, it's even colder, and that can lend toward more problems because it's even more restrictive than normal. Jupiter is the gas giant, so it's very opposite of Saturn, right? Saturn's constrictive. Jupiter is very expansive and expressive and jovial, and it brings a lot of joy to your life and too much of a good thing sometimes. It likes lots of excess, which is fine for some things and not fine for others. It does rule over the liver, and so because of that, we see a lot of potential liver issues here, depending on which house it's in and which sign that it's in, because people with a strong Jupiter presence in their chart tend to like really, gourmet foods and the very rich foods, and the ones that unfortunately don't lend to great liver health over time. And then we have Mercury, which was named after the messenger of the gods, which went between the upper planes and the lower planes between the gods and delivered messages. So in that way, Mercury, the planet, does the same thing. It can go in and out of any of the planets. It can balance any of the planets out. It's a very neutral presence and neutral energy. It doesn't have a lot of its own like suppressive or expansive energy, perhaps. It's just very neutral, but it brings a nice balance to anything. So if anything's in excess, you can add some mercury plants and that'll help bring it down. If anything's is deficient, you can add some mercury and it'll bring it back up. So it's kind of ambiguous and it can do multiple different things. And so it doesn't have much of an expression of its own, perhaps. It does unfortunately cause a lot of havoc in many people's lives because of its, it does have a great influence on technology, which is why everybody hates Mercury retrograde, because that's when you get all your tech problems, communication problems. As it was the messenger of the gods, it rules communication and speech and technology. And so a lot of times when we go into retrograde, that's when we'll see Mercury's influence the most, which is when all that communication starts having issues and we get a lot of miscommunication problems, a lot of tech issues, things like that. I also run my business based off of like the planets and where they're at. And so I know never to start a new program or any kind of marketing when Mercury goes in into retrograde, because that's exactly when all my messaging is not going to be received in the way that I wanted it to, or it's going to be miscommunicated, and it's going to have the opposite effect a lot of times over what I wanted it to. So
yeah, I don't want to well, I will. I'm just going to ask you this question and we'll go back. So I know that you do medical astrology, but you also help people with their businesses, right? Just by looking at the planets.
I can. It's not my specialty. Like, I know tons of business astrologers. If anybody really wants that, they're probably your go-to people because they are much more attuned to that part of astrology than I am. But I know enough to be dangerous when it comes to that. Let's put it that way.
Awesome. So, I mean, it's so much information. Even when you read my chart, I was like, oh my goodness. So, I mean, how are our body systems governed by the signs and the planet positions?
Oh, so back in the day, the medical astrologers noticed a pattern when the moon was in different signs of which body parts would be afflicted the most. So, if the moon was in Aries, they noticed they started seeing a lot of headaches and a lot of strokes and a lot of blood clots and things like that that were all governing in the head. And then when the moon was in Taurus, they started noticing that they had a lot of ear, nose, and throat infections. They had a lot of tongue issues. They had a lot of thyroid problems happening, and vice on and on and on until we get through all 12 signs. And so they started noticing these patterns, and these are people that were actually trying to track actively what was happening when the planets were in certain signs and positions in the sky. And so when they started tracking this, they started noticing that there was certain signs that seem to have more influence over certain body parts than others, and that's where they make, it looks like a person, right? And then they assign each section to a different sign. I don't know if we've ever really come up with a really great explanation as to why that is, other than the fact that we are, divinely influenced by the cosmos because we are a part of it. We come from the cosmos, we're created from them, just like the plants are down here, and they're really affected by the change in the planets as well. The moon especially affects plants and water on our planet, as well as the water in our bodies. So I don't know if I ever came up with a really great explanation, other than that just seems to be because we're all so intricately linked with the cosmos.
Yeah. So it was so interesting when I was listening to your chart reading, because I have been going through the past couple years trying to get to the bottom of, all my issues. And over the past, I guess it was about 3 months, I've been doing a lot of functional medicine tests, and I've been doing a lot of blood work, and I've been
Mm-hmm.
tracking things probably for the past 6 months, but more so doing tons of testing the past 3. And you were able to kind of concisely tell me everything that I found over this 3.5 year journey or 4 year journey of my infertility struggle, and all the tests that I've compiled throughout the years, as well as my functional medicine tests. And I do a lot of Chinese medicine
Mm-hmm.
and acupuncture. And, you were able to see all that within my chart so easily.
Yes.
So I was like, wow, this is so powerful. I've got an exciting offer for all of my listeners: the free Divine Daily Practices video series. Get simple practices to release anxious thoughts, sharpen your intuition, and rewire your nervous system in less than 10 minutes a day. Come on over to my website at divinelifestyles.com/divine daily practices. And over the next week, you'll receive a complimentary self-care system to drop into your authentic self and activate your divine intuitive wisdom. I hope you enjoy. I have a few specific questions for you,
Sure.
because now is the time we can go into some specifics. Like you said, I have my notes here, but you said one thing that really stuck out for me, and you were like, yeah, I can really see why that your pregnancy didn't last in when you were 42. It doesn't seem like you should try again when you're 43, which is literally next month. but
Yes.
you had said very like clearly that this wasn't the year. So I just kind of wanted to dig into that a little bit more. Like what did you see that made you, I know you saw so many things, but
Yes. It's hard to narrow
particular,
it down.
yes.
Yeah, so what I saw was that your Saturn is being afflicted in your chart, and you have a very strong Saturn presence, which is great for a lot of things. Like you're really awesome at setting boundaries in work and life, and you know what you want and you like to go for it, and that's awesome. But Saturn also has a great influence on your physical health, and there's a lot of constriction and restriction going on in certain body parts because of that influence. On top of that, Saturn is the one planet that gives us the most trouble in our life at certain ages. So, the biggest one that most everybody remembers is when Saturn returns in your chart to the same sign that it was in your natal chart. So, that usually happens around 28 to 29, and everybody will probably remember if you start thinking about it that at 28, 29, you had like probably big life changes, something crazy happened, or somebody died. Like there was just some major life changes that happened at 28, 29, somewhere in there. It depends on
Mhm.
what sign you're in, that just made you probably up and change like your entire life. You probably went from I'm going to go do X, Y, and Z to making a 180 and doing something else. And it's where huge life changes are.
Yeah.
So that's the big
I was
effect. It also,
27,
yeah, exactly.
27 going on 20.
Yeah, and that's exactly when mine happened too. So I 100% am with you there. It was a crazy year, let's just put it that way. And that influence can last up to 2 years for some people, again, depending on what sign Saturn is in, and then just what else is in your natal chart, right? And then another big Saturn return is in like your 50s, because it's every 28 years that it comes back to that natal planet for you, that natal sign for you. And then so that's when we see a lot of like midlife crises, right? A lot of like later life divorces and people doing stuff. Well, unfortunately, every 7 years, starting from 28 on, Saturn starts acting up again in your chart and causing more, you know, craziness. Depending, it's not usually as bad as like this 28-year Saturn return, but it definitely can cause some issues in your life, and it can bring a lot more constriction and restrictive uh, nature into your body. And that happens to be one of those 7 years, happens to be age 42. And so I see that. I was like, oh, she's 42. And then I forget which sign your Saturn is in. I'd have to grab my notes. But because of that and what sign it's in, it just immediately stood out to me that that was just, it's not your year. There's nothing wrong with trying for sure, but I think it's going to lead to disappointment because 42 is just not the year that you're supposed to be having this, go through with it. And that 43 was just Saturn's going to move a little bit further away from where it's affecting you, and it just things are going to start opening up more. The flow is going to be better in your body, your energy flow, your blood flow, everything, and it just is the year that you should be trying.
I know. I loved it. You were even able to see, like, wow, that your body, like, you were able to see some Mars with the inflammation. You were able to see a couple things that you had
Mm-hmm.
said could lead to infertility. There was a few things, and you were like, okay, I'm seeing like this kind of tracking, and also dryness, right? Dryness
Yes.
in the body and the constriction. And I had known a lot of this stuff about myself because I've been doing a lot of the acupuncture and Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic,
Mm-hmm.
Panchakarma cleanse, like where they're checking my pulse and they're really able to see what areas of my body are stagnant. And fibroids, endometriosis, that blood
Mm-hmm.
flow that gets stagnant. So that came up, and also that I don't have a ton of water in my body. So it was just so interesting because and this foods that you recommended that I eat, I
Mm-hmm.
know this about myself with my digestion. I know digestion was another major thing that came up in my chart.
Yes. And a lot
Yes.
of like the number one reason, right? The absolute number one reason for hormonal issues in the body is nutritional deficits. And you can be eating the best diet known to man, following all the right things, and still have a nutritional deficit if there's other things going on in your body. And the biggest one I see, especially in the women that I work with, is that there is something going on with their digestion, right? So the sun has a big role to place in your digestion, because we call that is your digestive fire. And if you don't have enough digestive fire, which is the Ayurveda way of saying basically you don't have enough stomach acid, right? That it's going to suppress your body's ability to uptake nutrients properly, because you're not going to be able to break them down into the necessary pieces that you need to be able to take them up. So you can be eating the best diet known to man and still have a nutritional deficit going on, because you're not digesting the food properly in a way your body can absorb the nutrients. And then it lends to issues to start happening, because if you don't have the proper building blocks to create what you want in your body. And so that's a big issue that I see. And I saw that in yours as well. And a lot of it comes from all that dryness that you have in your chart, because you are really deficient in water in your chart. And so that lends to a lot of dryness, and a lot of dryness means that you can't absorb properly, because your mucous membranes, and your intestine is one big giant long mucous membrane, gets too dry, and then you're not uptaking things properly, or you're reabsorbing too much water and you're diluting things. So it just, it's like a catch 22. It just keeps circling back around, and you never fix the problem, because you don't really realize that's the problem, right? So knowing this now, it can be like, oh, okay, that's my issue, and now I know it, and we start working on it. And there's other ways to make sure that you are getting minerals and vitamins in ways that your body can absorb it. The one thing that I really like to use is cell salts, because they skip the whole digestive process. You stick it under your tongue, it melts, and it goes right into your bloodstream. You don't even have to worry about the digestion process. Spagyric tinctures are my other thing that I love to use. They were actually created in harmony with medical astrology, and they use the entire whole plant, including the minerals and salts that go back into it. And so it also contains minerals and salts and things that your body needs. And so it works on your whole body, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally, just like the whole plant would if you, ran out and ingested it just like that. But it comes in an easy to take form, meaning you only have to take a few drops, compared to, drinking 8 to 12 ounces of tea multiple times a day, right? And for some people, that's a hazard, is a barrier, because they have to go to work outside the home, and it's really hard to make 6 cups of tea while you're at work sometimes, right? And so spagyric tinctures make it easy, because you can pop it in your purse and take a few drops whenever you need it at work. And I just like them because they work a lot better that way, and they add some nutrition back in for you.
So it's so funny. You also said that a lot of Virgos end up becoming nutritionists. Hi, like I studied
Yes.
nutrition, I study hormone nutrition. Like I was like very spot on. And it's so true. Like
Mhm.
I could eat as healthy as I like, but guess what? My body doesn't react to those foods. Like people think, okay, you have to eat. I was on a vegan raw diet. I did terribly. My body can't break down raw foods. I need my foods cooked. I need things warming. I need things really easy and soft to digest.
Mhm.
It's funny you said that my body needs animal protein. I tried so hard to go just vegetarian, and I was like, I can't do this.
Nope.
I physically was,
Yeah.
lightheaded. I wasn't getting enough iron. I just was feeling
Mhm.
super depleted. And that was one of the other things that you mentioned in my chart. You were like, you need to get iron from animal protein.
Yeah. Your body will break it down a lot better.
But I am the type of person that tried forever to be a vegan. I tried to be a raw plant-based vegan. And I was like, why isn't this working? Why do I feel terrible?
Yeah. Well, because the digestive fire is not high enough in your body to break down raw foods, for one, which doesn't
Yeah.
help anything. And then for two, your body is just cosmically designed to need a lot of animal products. And I will just throw that out there. I have not yet, and I've read a ton of charts, I have not yet seen one person who's come to me for any kind of hormonal problems that should ever be a vegan or a vegetarian. And most of their problems started when they went on that diet because they were like, oh, this is what's better for me, because that's what you hear. And then all of their hormonal problems started. Most people that come to me are very similar in the fact they need lots of animal products and proteins and stuff in their diets. And when they stopped getting those, their body started losing the nutrition that it needed, and then it led to hormonal problems. So I just see that a lot. It's really funny that you bring that up because that's one of the main things I see is that people come to me and they're like, I've tried all these, insert, crazy diets here, and it doesn't seem to work for my body. What am I doing wrong? And it's like, you're not doing anything wrong. You just need to find what works for your body. And so part of what I do too in the medical astrology is astronutrition and seeing what really works for everybody's individual bodies and giving them very specific things to follow in their diets and things that are better for them to eat over others, and really help them narrow down how their body works so that, again, you don't struggle like you did where you're like, I am trying so hard to be a vegan, why is it not working? And then you
But
feel
my
like it's a you problem.
but my husband does amazing.
Yeah.
So, he's like a plant-based vegan. He can do that and he feels amazing. And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh gosh, I have to cook, you can have it raw and I'm going to cook it.
exactly. And men's hormones are a whole nother ball game, right? Theirs regenerate every 24 hours. It's a lot harder for them to have like any issues caused by actual nutritional deficits that impact their hormones as much as it is women. Unfortunately, we're just designed differently that way, and so we require a lot of different nutrients than they do to maintain the same, level of vitality that they get just from being able to eat completely different from us.
Yeah, and I love that you're doing the whole astro nutrition. I think that we'll have to include that in when we partner up for my next program. We'll have to include some astro nutrition with the hormonal nutrition. So
Yes.
let's
Yes.
let's chat a little bit about the moon cycle mapping, because I know that you had mentioned that that was something that would be really beneficial for me. I'm
Mhm.
doing all sorts of things, as trying to get pregnant naturally. And so from my apps to my basal thermometers to my yoni steams, which actually is really great because it's creating lots of moisture.
Yes,
So I've been
yes.
upping my yoni steams since you did my reading. And also I do a lot of ovulation strips, I
Mhm.
do the LH surge strips. I do lots of that. So moon cycle mapping is kind of next for me. So can you just explain that to me in a little bit more detail?
Yeah. So anybody listening might know this, but I'm just going to go into the basics first. The moon has a 28-day cycle where it cycles through all of the signs, all of its phases, and goes from new to full and then starts back over again, right from full to new. And that's its life cycle is every 28 days. In those 28 days, it goes through all 12 signs. It affects all of those different parts of your body, and it's with its influence based on which sign that it's in currently. And its phases and the cycle that it's go through actually syncs up with women's natural hormonal cycles and our natural rhythm that we are designed to have. And so I find that for many people, most people, it works best to start tracking your cycle based on the moon phases and where it's at. So, like for me personally, I know my body so well now after tracking it through the moon phases for so long that I know that every new moon, I'm going to have my period. I'm going to bleed. I'm going to do that whole thing. I know it's coming. And then every full moon, I'm going to ovulate. And most women follow either that cycle or they follow the opposite, where they bleed on a full moon and they ovulate on a new moon. And those are the two most common ways to follow the moon cycle. And then there's some that follow the quarter moons instead. So like they bleed on the first quarter moon and they ovulate on the last quarter moon, or vice versa. But those are much more rare. It tends to be that we follow the new and full moon cycles the most. And so what I find is useful is that as you're going through and tracking your cycle, I keep a moon journal. I recommend all my clients keep a moon journal. Anyone who has a menstrual cycle should keep a moon journal. I have an app on my phone because it's the easiest thing to do that tells you where the moon is, what phase it's in, and what sign that it's in currently. And I write all that down. And then I write down, how am I feeling that day? How am I physically feeling? How am I emotionally feeling? How am I spiritually feeling? And after you do this for about a month or two, you will start really figuring out like which moon phases affect you the most, which sign when it's in, certain signs affect you the most, and also be able to track like your cycle to it. So I also put down, like, I'm in this part of my cycle. I'm in the follicular phase, the ovulatory phase, all that stuff.
Mhm.
And after about, I'd say probably 2 to 3 months of doing this, you really start to learn your body well, and you can immediately like wake up and go, oh, I feel like the moon is in Aries today. And you can look on your app and go, oh, it is in Aries. And you could tell immediately based on how you feel, right? And I just find that it works so much better for so many women to track their cycles that way. It makes it easier to remember when your bleeding phase is coming and how to prepare for it, right? And also when you're going to have more energy, because when you're in your follicular and ovulatory phases, you have much more energy to get things done. And that's how your body's designed to be. And then when you get closer to your bleeding phase, you have a lot less energy. So it can really help you sync up not just your cycle to what to expect, but like your life too. Like you can sync up, like, okay, this week's going to be the worst week to start a new project at work or in my business, or building something on my house, because I know I'm going to be leaning into my bleeding week and I'm not going to be able to have enough energy for this. So I should really do it on this week instead, where we're going into the full moon and I have so much more energy. And or because if that's your ovulatory phase like mine, and so it actually really helps you start really living in the rhythm of the earth, the rhythm of the seasons, the rhythm of the moon. And you'll start noticing too that you'll just start feeling better overall when you start actually paying attention to that stuff. And it really helps kind of just ease life up. It makes it easier, and it kind of helps you be easier on yourself, because you're like, oh, well, I don't have a lot of energy this week. Instead of beating yourself up about not getting all this, stuff done that you wanted to, you have grace for yourself, because you're like, oh, well, it's just bleeding into the new moon and I don't have a lot of energy during this week. So my body really needs rest, and it's okay to give my body rest this week, right? And you can give yourself some grace and some understanding. And it just overall is, I don't know. I personally found my life got better with it. A lot of my clients found their lives did too, because they started giving themselves grace instead of beating themselves up all the time over stuff we can't help. And
Mhm.
it changed not only their
So,
cycles but also their lives.
what is the app? Because I'm dying to know.
It's called
What's the app?
DAF Moon. DAFF Moon. It's a free app that tracks all of the planets and where they are currently in the sky and what signs they're in. I use it mainly for the moon, and we know where the sun is usually. Almost everybody can tell you that we're in Leo season currently, right? Because everybody knows that.
Mhm.
Everyone knows the sun signs. Um, but it also tells you all the other planets if you really wanted to know them. I follow it mainly for the moon because that works best for what I do. But
Yeah.
yeah, you can use it to see where Saturn is right now, or Mercury or whatever.
Yeah. I'm super excited because I'm just coming off of my moon. So I would love to kind of see where it is through the app. Um,
Mhm.
Unless you know, I'm just literally coming off of my moon day 5.
Okay. We are
I don't
currently
know if
on
you
our
happen
way
to.
to a full moon. There's supposed to be a full moon on Monday, Tuesday, whatever day August 1st is. I think this next Tuesday. There's supposed to be a full moon then. We are currently in a waxing moon, going into a full moon, and it's in Scorpio today, which I could feel immediately because I'm a 5-planet Scorpio. And let me tell you, when I woke up this morning, I was like, oh, we must be close to Scorpio, because I was just feeling very like bogged down and like really emotional and like a lot of watery like symptoms, right? And yeah, we're in Scorpio, which my body knew immediately thanks to all the Scorpio in my chart.
So this is so cool because all of this information you could really use in your everyday life.
Hmm. And that's what I like about
Right.
medical astrology, is it literally helps you figure out how the cosmos affect you specifically, so that you can then figure out how to balance out whatever those things are. So lean into the opposite signs. So like in your case, you're a sun Virgo, so Pisces is your opposite sign. So leaning into a lot of what Pisces rules and working on that. Like you told me in one of our meetings that a lot of your symptoms when you start having issues of anything, you feel it in your feet. And that's because Pisces rules the feet, and that's your opposite sign. So a lot of times you might feel your symptoms in the body parts governed by that balancing sign. And then that gives you your keys as to how to balance, right? Go get reflexology, go get foot massages, get pedicures, whatever, right? To keep those feet happy and healthy. And that'll help balance out and keep your Virgo happy too in the process.
It's so interesting. The moment that I have like a sip of like any alcohol, it's like it gets stored in my feet.
Mm-hmm.
It's very strange. Like if I do any sort of like toxic eating, or you know what I mean, like eating
Yeah.
bad food or going out and having a drink, I feel it in my feet.
Yeah.
And it's my body just telling me, okay, and like it's like energy gets stuck. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
so interesting.
Yeah. Virgo rules the liver, which is why, and it's a very drying sign, which you already know you have a lot of dryness going on. And so when you do drink alcohol, your body just gets extra dry because it's a very dehydrating substance. And so, yeah, you're feeling that in your feet because that energy in your liver is getting stagnant. And because you're that Virgo, you're going to feel it in your opposite sign. So it makes sense.
It's so crazy. It's just so crazy. This stuff is so amazing. So tell everyone where they can find you so they can work with you. Like, what's the best way for people who are listening, who want to do their chart, who are interested in working with you one-on-one? Where can they find you?
Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Twin Raven Naturals. That's where I post the most. And I guess on Threads now too, because it's like combined with Instagram. So there's that. You can go straight to my website if you want to avoid going to Instagram at all. That's www.twinravennaturals.com. And that has, ways to sign up and work with me from there. And I also I have a podcast, the Herbal Eir, that you can listen to on any podcast platform that you have. I'm on Spotify, Apple, etc. And that I go into a lot of details on medical astrology and like all the different stuff. And so that's a really good like free resource to help you kind of get started in the right direction. And then I also have a free ebook that's entitled Your Sun Sign and Your Health that you can download to help you start learning how to start working with your sun sign and balance out your health and any issues that you're having. And that you can get by going to my Instagram page or my website, and you can download them from there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know you're just a wealth of information. We can go on and on and on. But thank you so much for being here today and just sharing your gifts with us.
Yes, thank you for having me. You're right. I could probably talk for 10 hours about this, which is why I started my own podcast, because then I can, right?
Thank you so much, guys. Stick around for the next episode and we'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to this episode of Divine Lifestyles Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you get your episodes. If you really loved this episode, screenshot it and share it on social media. It will help us to continue to make an impact. With gratitude and love always, keep illuminating your path.